Just a stone's throw away from Possum Kingdom is Fort Richardson State Park, and that's my destination. Riding through the countryside, enjoying the late season wildflowers. And while the hillsides might be beautiful at Fort Richardson, it seems the skies are getting a little bit darker, and it's quite possible that a storm may be brewing. I'm no meteorologist, but I think it's gonna storm, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get wet if I try to hike. If you can't tell, a good storm makes me giddy. As you can see, this storm has intensified. There was hail a moment ago, so I parked underneath the tree. I'm not gonna go out and run just yet. We'll see how things develop. Oh no, they got caught on the trail. Yikes. Thankfully, the storm passed quickly enough. The storm brought out a lot of park residents. I just want to make sure that this guy doesn't get run over by an RV. So we're gonna get him off the road and help him get where he's going. Strava is running, but I am walking on the Kicking Bird Trail. It's only a third of a mile, so that if it's really a mess or the storm kicks up again, I can get back to the car. Too late, Fort Richardson, too late. I am glad I chose to do the loop in flip-flops, but it has cooled off by about 20 degrees after the storm. So I'm a little chilly. I know that was next to nothing, but did you know that most trails close after it rains? Because they want to keep hundreds of muddy footsteps from gouging up the trails while they're super wet. So I'm not going to feel too bad that I'm not going to explore more of Fort Richardson. I'll go back to the historic buildings and paint and mosey back to the Metroplex. Almost took a misstep and broke my ankle. This park is less about landscape and more about history, so I thought that is where I would direct my focus. Is that a duck? Oh, it's just my squeaky flip-flops. And speaking of directing focus, I was thinking about how to avoid mindlessly producing just another state park painting. So the change in subject matter would be helpful. But I also wanted to employ a strategy called the Think Aloud protocol. And you can read about this everywhere, there's tons of literature. But the science behind it is that it helps you understand what decisions the participant, in this case me, the painter, is making and why they're making them. And this may not be for everyone, but maybe you'll enjoy hearing my thoughts as this longer format painting video plays out. It's a different kind of park, and it deserves a different kind of painting. And I sort of like this view right here. But I really like this view. Right now I'm going to measure the window and see how tall it is, the width to the height, and it's about double. I'm going to use the window on the far edge as my basis for everything. But I also want to get some of the floor in there, so I'm going to put it basically all the way over. And I'm going to take this and I'll double it. And I'm going to try to build off of that for everything else. Not worrying too much about specifics, but definitely making sure I want to have the dry and the wet area of the porch, which basically runs like this. And then there's a nice little corner of the bench that you can just barely see. and that creates a weird tangent where they touch almost exactly together. I'm going to drop this down just a little bit so that they don't both meet right there perfectly, which I think would be a little bit weird. But how the window is a little bit longer than the width, so 2/3 of the way across the window is what I'm saying. That's the length of the back, so it's smaller than I made it. And the angle there, something like this. And I can use that back corner of the porch, this measurement here, and say how far down is it. It's almost that same distance to the front post here, to this guy, which runs even with this. And that gives us this area that pops out here. Makes me wonder about this mark, if maybe it shouldn't be a little bit wider. Going back to that vanishing point. Second post. What's the width on that? About as wide as this whole thing. Make it just a little bit thicker than the post that I made before. But now we're in trouble. From the house to the corner, and from the corner out, that's about right. But that means this angle is really, I keep changing it, but it's like this. Feel right, so I'm gonna move this post in just a little bit. And I'm gonna use this for that outer post here. This is kind of shadowy, but there's some light coming out. And then within this, we should have another post, something like this. Smaller post, because it's further away. This is halfway down, but then this is divided into thirds. And just above the second third is the back of the porch, and then it starts sloping up to meet this thing at the top of the door. So from here to here is the roof, is the underside. And this whole thing is going to be dark. Okay. Now we have to drop in a post in the back corner. We'll just silhouette that guy. And then pretty close to this. This is dark. This side is a little bit darker. The watery stain is dark, and this makes this part of the porch darker, especially out to there. And then, as long as we're being truthful about it, and this is dark up here. It starts to fade off down here. Just about the area of where the roof is. And then in the bottom third, 1, 2, 3 here, there's a light in the back. That's one of the things that I liked seeing. And other than that, the window is dark, and I'll paint the mullions back over the top of that. I like the tone of the sky farther over to the right. That's what it was like when I sat down. It was a little bit darker. This is my view. This is my current progress. I'll check in a second. So I definitely waited too long to show more. But I thought one thing that I would do while I was putting in these first color notes is I would give an indication of where they actually need to be stronger. So in through the window I can see the yard around this building, and that mirrors what's going on over here. But what's happening elsewhere is that the green of the lawn is bouncing up, and so in particular, like right here is particularly green, and that's going to be absurd to leave it like that, but I'm going to put it in so that I don't not do it. And then while these are both kind of wet, you can see I made this post right here a little bit more green, but I'm going to add some green into this dark area up here for that light that's bouncing in, so it feels a little bit more like what I'm seeing. Not so much down there, but along some of these blocks here, maybe just where it's the lighter of the colors. Even if I do a lot to paint over that, it's still going to be in there and you'll feel it, because I can definitely sense it all the way around. Anytime there's a downward facing plane, like across here, you can sense it as well. So while the paint is still kind of loose, just giving an indication in all these areas, and it'll actually start to feel a little bit more correct, hopefully. I've been putting in some details on the window. It's really fun. You can see there's a highlight on a writing desk that you can see. You can also see a chair at the desk, creating a silhouette. I like that you can make out the mullions of the back window through this. I want to keep them thin and maybe just suggest them. And I don't want to do too much, and draw a ton of attention there, but I do like that you can make out that there's light reflecting off the floor just a little bit. So some of this stuff helps give that window a little interest. And then I've already got the reflections of the grass and the reflections of the sky. And then I think I'm going to pull back out and try to get the rest of it feeling a little bit more complete. I really liked the rafters when I sat down and looked at it, and I liked the stonework here. So even if I leave some of this stuff a little bit more loose and skeletal, I'd like to get in and finish some of the architectural things. I think it's been fun putting in some of that greenish kind of gray. So I'm going to mix up some of that and bring in some of it. There's a rafter that comes right off the corner of the house and meets this section, and that's catching some of that green as well. But some of the rafters in the back there are actually pretty light coming off of here. It's a little light hitting a couple of these. And I think it would be silly to try to paint all of them, but there's a little bit of that green bouncing up back in here. So if I paint that across, I can then bring down those other marks and differentiate that a little bit. I'll do the same thing in here where there's some of these long rafters coming across and they're catching a little reflection of the grass. Not reflection, but reflected light. coming up. And then there are just some good, strong, dark areas that go right along with it. And that initial wash was maybe just a little bit too light to begin with. And they're not really uniform in their appearance, so I don't want to give them too much of that. And like I said, I don't really want to get in and start painting every single one of them. I don't think I'd have time, and I actually don't think it would look good. There's a part of the gable that's just a little bit more rectangular, a little darker overall. I think with some of these, it might start to feel a little bit like it's feeling back there. Let a little bit of the texture indicate the beams, and we'll let the light of area of the wash kind of describe the downward facing portion. Maybe. I just can't get too stuck on trying to get all of that done if I've got so much to do everywhere else. So I think what I'll hope to do is just bring everything up a little bit. One of the things I want to be really careful with is the storm has passed, and so the sun is really strong in creating shadows, and it's really lightened things up. And I don't want to alter my painting based on that new lighting. But I do think that something in here lacks contrast, where if the sky was super dark, the poles should be lighter. I also think that this is a little bit too green. Within an hour, the sun will have set and it'll have gotten pretty dark. So I want to make sure that I get a decent amount in here before time runs out. You can see in some areas I really overstated the reflected light, the orange and the green, but I love that, especially up in this corner. And it's pretty rustic. I feel like it gives a decent idea of a 19th century fort. Another one finished. The sun is setting on another park. That's 10. I think I'm the only one left in the lot. Love the storm. Wish they could all be like that. So what began in San Angelo and took me across Possum Kingdom and Fort Richardson is another group of parks in the Panhandle Plain, and I'm within striking distance of finishing the entire region off. I think I'll add these pieces to the gallery wall, and it's a cooler morning. It might be my last chance in a long time to enjoy a fire. What I'm thinking I might do is shift the gallery wall somewhere else in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any thoughts about that Think Aloud protocol and if you enjoyed the longer format video.